Today on the show, I saw Paramore live in Melbourne and it was awesome. I have many thoughts on the Squid Game reality TV show. Plus, we're celebrating NoMas Eve, as much as most of you will hate that. All that and more on 20th Century Boy, the show that's not mad, man. Just disappointed. Welcome to 20th Century Boy. My name is Luke Mikewalker, and this is the inside of my mind. Oh, welcome again, guys. Welcome back. Coming to the tail end of the year. Radio Mike, of course, is my name, not Luke Mikewalker, but every week I do a different name, and as I've been saying all year, it's harder and harder to think of them. Usually they're Mike-related puns, like Mike Fairlady, Mike Chemical Romance, Mike Sharona. Anyway, you've heard them all before, but we're running out. So now I just do anything that even remotely resembles Mike, like Luke Mikewalker, obviously Luke Skywalker. Very not a rhyme, but I've just done it anyway because it's my podcast and I don't care. Send in your alternative names that I can start the show with. Plus, send in anything. You might have noticed at the start of the show, well, of course you've noticed because you're listening, I always do like, all that and more on 20th Century Boy, the show that, and then I have some funny/witty intro tag. They're also hard to come up with. So, if you have any, send them through. Welcome, though, to 20th Century Boy, the podcast by me, Radio Mike, a writer and producer from here in Melbourne. This podcast is the conversations you wish you were having about the stuff that no one else cares about. If you're one of those people who has a lot of thoughts swirling around your head on things that no one else gives a shit about, this is the podcast for you, because that's me. I just constantly am thinking about all of this stuff that I want to talk to people about, but I have no one to talk about it with, so I do a podcast. And this is that. Thanks for listening. It's a weekly one-sided conversation. You can't talk back, but you can write in. RadioMikePod@gmail.com, at It's Radio Mike on Twitter, radio.mike on Instagram, radio.mike on TikTok. Basically, I've actually been here's a good place to start. I've actually been fine-tuning that a bit, like my socials, because I've over the last few weeks, over the last month, basically, a bunch of people asked me to be on their podcast, and I've done heaps of podcast guest appearances. So I did a few episodes of The Share House by friend of the show, Mikey D and Joel Harris. I did 2 podcasts in America. One was called what was it called? Belated Binge, which is a Harry Potter read-through podcast. So go listen to that. That was a lot of fun. I love deep dive analyzing media, as you know, if you listen to this podcast. So yeah, Belated Binge was awesome. And then one that isn't out yet, that's not out till January, but it was called Burn Before Reading. And it's about people who used to write when they were kids. And of course, if you listen to my other pod, Harry Potter and the Boys, I used to write when I was a kid. So I talked all about my fan fiction, Harry Potter and the Boys. That's coming out. Can't wait for you to hear that. Did an episode of a pod called Content Capable. Anyway, I did a bunch of stuff. There's a bunch of stuff coming out. Just, to do stuff. I love doing podcast collabs. And at the end of every pod, everyone always says, so Mike, where can people find you on the internet? And I'm used to going, yeah, TikTok this, Twitter this, Instagram this, YouTube this. But now I think I'm at a point, maybe this is a good leap through point of my career, because I think I'm actually at a point now where if you just Google Radio Mike, I'm pretty sure I come up. So now I just say, just Google Radio Mike, you'll find me. Just Google me. You'll find me. Just type in Radio Mike podcast, Radio Mike Instagram, you'll find me. Just Google me. I think I'm going to stop giving out individual socials because you'll find me. I'm just at that point now. Hey, it's awesome. But yeah, it's been really fun. I don't even know why I said that. Oh yeah, because I was plugging my socials. Right into any of my socials. If you can't find them, just Google me. You'll find them. Of course, I do need to plug my live show with Sammy Garlep. That is on December 15th at 7 p.m. at the Cooper's Inn. You can get tickets at my website, radiomike.com.au. I would love to see you there. It's going to be like an end of year thing, and it's going to be, reading a chapter of Harry Potter and the Boys, which is fucking hilarious every time. So please grab a ticket. If you're struggling with money and you really want to come or anything, just send me a DM. We'll work something out. But some of you may be a little bit disappointed. Some of you may notice that this episode, if you're the kind of person who listens to the episodes the day they come out, which I guess in my mind, I imagine that everyone is. I imagine that everyone listens when they come out. But of course, I do know deep down, some people listen to every other episode. Some people just cherry pick episodes. Some people just like listen, like a binge listening, and they're still on like season 2 of the podcast, which was really different. But today is November 30th. 30 days has November, April, June, and November. Wait, 30 days has September, April, June, and November? Yeah, it's that. So this is the last day of November. And of course, on this podcast, we celebrate NoMas. That is no celebrating Christmas or even thinking about Christmas until at the very earliest December 1st. I personally generally like to do December 15th because my birthday is December 12th. God, you're learning a lot about me this ep. But I guess if you're starting your Christmas celebrations on December 1st, then November 30th, this day, is NoMas Eve. So I wanted to wish everybody a happy NoMas Eve. This is the last day of NoMas, and of course, when you're celebrating... hang on. Yeah, that's better. Of course, when you're celebrating Christmas, this kind of music... Okay, I'm definitely going to get a copyright strike for that. But when you're celebrating Christmas, yeah, you want to hear that. You're happy to hear that. When you're celebrating NoMas, I've decided as a NoMas tradition on November 30th of every year, you've got to listen to Christmas songs, and it's a mourning of NoMas. That's how you mourn NoMas. So you're not listening to enjoy, you're listening to mourn the NoMas lost. And then December 1st, the next day, you start playing your Christmas carols in joy. So November 30 is a day of mourning NoMas being lost. So we listen to Christmas songs, and December 1st is officially Christmas period. So I'll be listening to some Christmas carols just to mourn. If you want to write in or leave a voice message in my Instagram DMs, let me know what your favorite Christmas carol to mourn NoMas is. Mine's Sleigh Bells. I love Sleigh Bells. And it helps me mourn that we're about to leave NoMas. Of course, you will see if you're on the video version, Christmas tree in the background. I have been coerced into setting that up, and I have been unfortunately watching a few Christmas movies. I've done NoMas really bad this year, and I know it's offensive to all the listeners that I've done that, but I have. And I did notice one thing about a Christmas movie series that I really wanted to bring up. First of all, I should flag as well, full videos are now on Spotify. I've done that for the last few episodes, but I don't think I've talked about it. Full videos on Spotify and, of course, on YouTube. So you can watch the video pod full on Spotify. We watched The Santa Claus 3, The Escape Clause with Tim Allen over the weekend. And The Santa Claus and The Santa Claus 2 are definitely peak Christmas movies for anyone born in the 90s. Like, growing up, I feel like Tim Allen's Santa Claus was the Santa Claus. I feel like he really embodied the character, right? Tim Allen, great actor, you know, Buzz Lightyear, Home Improvement, Santa Claus. That's 3 pretty big characters. Not even Chris Evans could nail Buzz Lightyear and make money for Disney, but Tim Allen, I'd watch anything that guy's in, even though he's a massive cokehead. I probably shouldn't say that, but I think it's true. Anyway, the Santa Claus 2, I have a few thoughts on this. The first one is this. The Santa Claus, as a film series, the Santa Claus has got to be one of the most difficult to understand titles for its demographic. I was talking about this with a friend from work, Nick, recently, where we both said the same thing. I didn't realize that the Santa Claus, the movie, was clause, as in a clause in a contract, because the clause is that if Santa dies and you put on the suit, you become Santa. That's the Santa Claus. As a kid, and I bet you thought the same thing, you just thought that's how you spell Santa Claus. It's a very clever title. It's a Santa Claus, but I don't think any kids ever knew that's what it was. If you're realizing it from the first time from listening to this, let me know. But I genuinely think that title was too complicated for the kids that were watching the movie. I had no idea. I literally think I was like 20 when I was like, it's Santa Claus. It's literally a clause, as in Santa's dead and he puts the coat on and that's the clause, he becomes Santa. Did you know that? Because I genuinely, that blew my mind. We watched the Santa Claus 3 with Tim Allen and Martin Short, I think, plays the bad guy, Jack Frost. And first of all, I never saw the Santa Claus 3. I think it came out, I'm going to estimate it came out in 2006. And I just think maybe at that point I was 13. Maybe it was that's too much of a kid's movie for me. I don't see shit kids movies, even though I was still a kid. I definitely saw the second one, loved the first two, never saw the third one, and always was just the third one. Who would see the third one? That sucks, right? Watched it. Loved being back at the North Pole with my boy Tim Allen. The Santa Claus series, it's a very fun series. I actually think it's quite heartwarming. And everyone, I looked on Letterboxd at the reviews, everyone said the Santa Claus 3 was terrible. I actually really liked it. I don't know why. I just thought it was a fun movie. And I think that's what Christmas movies are supposed to be. I gotta say, there's a few things I think Christmas movies shouldn't be. Sometimes they try to make adult Christmas movies, not adult as in porn, but just Christmas movies that are adult themed and don't have Santa in them. They're just about adults doing stuff on Christmas. I don't like those. For me, Christmas movies always are supposed to be about Santa and kids believing in Santa and the power of magic. That's what a Christmas movie is supposed to be, right? And Santa Claus has that. I'm not anti, that being said, Love Actually, I would say, is a Christmas movie and I love that, right? I actually love Love Actually. There's a few other points though. One point is, in Christmas movies, even the Santa Claus, often the adults in the movies are don't believe in Santa. They're oh, no, Santa's not real. Magic isn't real, blah, blah, blah. But the problem with that is that in these movies, Santa does canonically exist. So that means that Santa is delivering presents to children every Christmas. Who do the parents think is bringing the presents to the kids then? Because if they don't actually believe in Santa, which is often the theme of Christmas movies, is no, the adults don't believe in Santa, but the kids do, and the adults are have lost hope. But then they must know that every year Christmas presents that they didn't buy appear under the tree. So who are they thinking does that? It actually doesn't make sense. Now, I know we're probably all willing to turn a blind eye to that because it's just a fun movie, and that's the whole point of Santa. But I do think it's a very funny little omission because what we realized after the Santa Claus 3 is recently, 20 years later-ish or 15 years later, Disney Plus has now done a series called The Santa Clauses, which brings back Tim Allen as Santa. And it's now I've been Santa for 25 years or whatever it is. And it's a new series of the Santa Claus with Tim Allen. And it's it's awesome. I love that they've created it. And it's just they've put out 2 seasons, one each Christmas this year and last year. So yeah, we've started that and we're really enjoying that. And again, I think Tim Allen is the best fictional Santa Claus. I watched this movie on Netflix last Christmas and it was called The Christmas Chronicles. And I can't even remember who was playing Santa. I probably should have written it down, but the guy who was playing Santa, just in my mind, was not Santa. The way he portrayed Santa was this really arrogant, annoying dude. And I was that's not Santa. Santa is jolly and friendly to everyone and has no ego. We all know deep down that is the character of Santa Claus. Tim Allen did it perfectly. This guy in the Christmas Chronicles was the worst depiction of Santa I've ever seen. And it wasn't even supposed to be Santa negative. Santa was still the hero in the movie. But yeah, Tim Allen is Santa Claus for forever. I will always see Tim Allen as my Santa Claus. The other thing I discovered about the Santa Claus is, and don't ask how I figured this out, but did you know the Santa Claus series in France has a different name? and I love it. In France, the Santa Claus with Tim Allen is called Super Noel, which I actually think is a way better title. And if you don't read it as Noel, you could just read it as Super Noel, which I also think is even better. Like Super Noel. Imagine a comic book series about Super Noel. Like, what would his powers be? But it's Super Noel. The sequel, which in the West is called, well, in English-speaking countries is called The Santa Claus 2, not in France, not even called Super Noel 2, which would be Super Noel 2. In France, the Santa Claus 2 is called Hyper Noel. Hyper Noel? What is this, a potion in Pokemon? Super potion, hyper potion, mega potion? Like, I would have loved if the third one was called Mega Noel, but it's not. The third one does have a funny name. Of course, it goes back to the beginning. It is called, so in English, it's the Santa Claus 3, the Escape Clause, right? It's the Escape Clause. In France, it's called Super Noel 3. You're never going to believe this. Mega Giver. Super Noel 3, Mega Giver. Why does it sound like a Transformer? Mega Giver. I love that. I've done this before on the show where I'm pretty sure it went really viral. I talked about how the Fast and Furious movies in Japan are called Wild Speed. And it's like Wild Speed, Double Trouble, Wild Speed, Space Mission. Like, that's what all of the Fast and Furiouses are called in Japan. Can we, if anyone knows them, can you send in what's a movie title, TV show title, anything really that in a different language just translates completely differently and is much better? Because I think Super Noel, Hyper Noel, and Super Noel 3 Mega Giver is way better than the Santa Claus 2, and the Santa Claus 3 the Escape Clause. So send them in. Okay, I definitely went on about the Santa Claus way longer than I thought, but I do have just some very brief follow-ups from one thing I talked about last week. Here it is.
All the write-ins that you sent in.
Last week I was talking about how I didn't think there was a fast way to fill an ice tray. It was the ultimate slow-down chore. Got a few messages. Patrio Whitey, who is one of our executive producers on Patreon. Thanks again, Whitey. And obviously the executive producers on Patreon donate the most money, and I think Whitey shows how much money he has through his message. I have an ice machine built into my fridge, which does crushed or cubed ice. Then he says, making ice manually with a vomit emoji, which I think is an ultimate sign of privilege. Now, I'm not making fun of Whitey. He'll get that this is funny. Or maybe he won't. I don't know. But the fact that you think manual ice trays is like vomit inducing, man, you're out of touch. You're out of touch. This is a meme from another podcast, but you're out of touch, man. Brody Henry, welcome to the radio family. He gave a interesting one. Ice tray dilemma. This was on Twitter. There's a flat section at the top of the ice tray. You pour the water onto that flat section with the ice tray on an angle, and it fills from the bottom up. As the bottom ones fill up, you less the angle until it's flat. There's slits in each cube section to do this. Easy. Now that is interesting. I wouldn't have thought that would work, but I am going to test it. But the ultimate best one came in also on Twitter from Radio Jaden. Now, there is another Radio Jaden who sometimes writes in, but this is a different Radio Jaden. There's two Radio Jadens. So this is Radio Jaden 2. And this actually blew my mind. I don't have the exact thing he wrote here, but he basically said, and this is a high effort to prep, but I do think it is clever. He doesn't even take the ice tray out of the freezer. He has an empty bottle of ketchup that he fills with water and then just squeezes into each ice tray, which definitely would be quicker. And I think that is very clever. Just keep an empty bottle of ketchup or any sauce in the fridge, fill it with water, bam, 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 bam. Very good solution. Really appreciate that. Thanks for writing it, everyone.
All the write-ins that you sent in.
I've been ranting for a while, but I'm wearing a Paramore shirt today. I saw Paramore in Melbourne on Monday night, and man, oh man, it was so good. I have seen Paramore live before, and like I don't even know where to start with this because if you're not familiar with Paramore, like I feel like you should listen to them because I feel like culturally they're a very important band, particularly to, I guess, in inverted commas, the pop punk / emo genre, but they've definitely transcended that label in recent years. Paramore are just an amazing band. Almost definitely most well known for their song Misery Business. Well, at least that, like when they first burst onto the scene, that song was massive. But now again, they've had many, many other songs, including like classics like The Only Exception. Darling, you are the only more recently, songs like Hard Times. And of course, Still Into You. And their most recent kind of hit single, I guess, is This Is Why. This is why I don't leave the house, you say. Fronted by Hayley Williams, who is a fantastic singer and performer who has 2 really good solo albums as well. They kind of formed in America in, I want to say like the mid-2000s, and they had their first breakthrough album was called Riot, which I'm again going to estimate came out around 06-07, which featured Misery Business. They did have an album before that. I think it was called All We Know Is Falling, but it definitely didn't sort of burst out commercially, which is kind of common. But I've always really liked them, and they've evolved so much over the years. I think they're a great example of how a band can continue to evolve to stay relevant, but not like completely abandon their roots. And the reason I say that is, of course, like Riot was very just like pop punk emo music, and I think it genuinely resonated so hard with so many people back in the day, particularly and I hate to generalize, but I do think it was really Paramore. I think it was really paramount in getting a lot of like women into that genre. Now, I'm not saying women weren't already into the pop punk genre, but I think when I think about like, why do I love Blink-182 so much? It's because like they were 3 white guys, to be honest, who were like skater punks who sung songs about girls, originally sung about girls and school and like that kind of thing. And I'm like, well, of course me, white guy, middle-class white guy, was going to love Blink. And I do think that Hayley Williams, for a lot of girls, even though, like, of course, I'm trying not to sound, like, sexist or anything, but I think even though a lot of girls already liked rock music and pop punk and all that, I think Hayley Williams was a real, like, sticking point of relatability to a lot of women and men. But, like, I think you guys know what I'm saying. And, like, the same way that a lot of young boys loved Blink-182 because they were so relatable. I think Hayley is very relatable as well. And they then did an album in 2009 called Brand New Eyes, which to me was just a follow-up. It was just another pop-punk record. Then I'm going to say 2013, they put out a self-titled album that was just called Paramore. And they had a lot of internal turmoil, I guess, at that point, in which several band members left. There was a lot of in-band fighting, which seems to happen with a lot of bands. 3 members, Hayley, Taylor York, and Zach Farrow, made this album Paramore, self-titled. And I often feel like when bands do self-titled albums in like on their 3rd or 4th album, that's them like saying, yeah, we've like this is our sound now. It's like a relaunch of the band in a way. Like Blink-182 did that in 2003 with their album Blink-182, which was a complete stylistic shift from what they'd done before. And Paramore, the album, was a very like, it still had all those elements of like the pop punk and emo, but it was much more like fine-tuned and closer to like pop rock, synth pop kind of vibes, which I really liked, and I thought they evolved really well. And then they did another album a few years later called After Laughter, which to me is their magnum opus, in which it was just really synth, like new wave, 80s kind of new wave, like inspired, and it sounded so cool, and I love that album so much. And then they did This Is Why, which is more stripped back and a little bit more like post-punk. Anyway, their music is really cool. I actually saw them live at Soundwave here in Melbourne in 2013. Soundwave 2013, I think, was one of the best festival lineups for a punk kid of all time. That lineup was Metallica, Blink-182, Linkin Park, Offspring, Sum 41, Paramore, Billy Talent, Bullet for My Valentine, amongst an array of other bands that were just like, it was just the perfect blend. And I think for me, it was in 2013 in January, like a month after I finished high school. And it felt like this culmination of every band I had liked as a kid in one spot at one time. I still remember that festival so well and I loved it. I think even like All Time Low were there. Like it was a really good lineup. If you were there, let me know. Someone on Twitter just said, yeah, I was there. It was amazing because I was tweeting about it. If you were there, let me know. I would love to chat to you and reminisce about it. I saw them. So that was 10 years ago. 10 years flies by really fast. When I saw them in 2013, they had just put out that self-titled album. Now they've put out 2 more albums and they're massive. And the live show was amazing. It is incredible. The last live show I went to was Paul McCartney. Now Paramore. It was just such a good show. And a couple things like I love just playing it. Like obviously it doesn't sound incredible, but here is Misery Business live in Melbourne on Monday night. Such a good performance, so much unity in that band. And I honestly, like every time I see a band live, it just makes me go, I need to listen to all their albums again. They're so good. And the crowd was just absolutely loving every song. And because when I saw Sum 41 last year, again, I did a whole podcast where I was like, fuck, I love those guys. Their music is so good. I have to re-listen to all of their stuff. Saw Paul McCartney. I started listening to all of his stuff. Now Paramore, I'm like, I have to listen to all of Paramore's albums, right? Again, I was saying last week, I'm a very impressionable guy. Something happens and I'm like, now I have to just know everything about this, right? Again, their reinvention, or not their reinvention, but their development as a band while never spitting on their roots. Like they didn't radically shift. They just evolved over time, which I think is like, that's my favorite part about listening to a band's discography is just hearing their sound grow and develop over time. And sometimes there's a curveball and it doesn't quite hit for just bands in general. Sometimes they just try so radically to change their style. And I think it's just too soon as a listener. Like, whereas Paramore feels like, particularly in that sort of 4-album run of Riot, Brand New Eyes, Paramore, and After Laughter, there's a straight line of growth. There's not one where it's like, oh, that's weird, now let's go back. Like, and that's why I think This Is Why that album feels like they're at a point where stylistically they're not afraid to just try anything. And I like that about them. And I've always really enjoyed Hayley Williams' solo work as well. The other thing I find really interesting about live performances of music, and this definitely happened with Paramore, is that often a live performance of a song that I don't like on the album really sells me that song. Like, I think there's some songs on albums where I'm like, I just think this is lame or I don't like it, blah, blah, blah. But then you hear it live and there's like this newfound appreciation for the song that you didn't have before. And that happened last night with this song called Rose Colored Boy, which I have never really liked that song. This is the sort of the start. And this is actually the part I don't like about it. That kind of like high pitched, low key, no pressure. I always was like, this is lame. I don't like this. But then heard it live and even those opening guitars sound super like 80s new wave or even like Cyndi Lauper, like that 80s, female vocalist with that new wave 80s tinge to it. And I just was like, wow, I actually that has sold that song for me, and I really enjoyed it. The other thing they did, which I thought was really special, and I don't always love when bands do this, but I think Paramore did it right, is they brought two people up to play to sing Misery Business, the last chorus or the last kind of verse. And often I don't like it when bands do it because to me it like makes one person in the crowd more special than everyone else, whereas everyone, regardless of how much money you paid, you've paid to be at the show, right? You love the band and you pay as much as you can for the best ticket you can get. Bringing someone on stage, I think, funnily enough, I remember the Wiggles saying in an interview once, like, we don't bring kids up on stage because we don't want one kid to feel the other kids to feel left out. And I think like that applies to grown-up bands as well. But they brought these two girls on stage. I'm going to estimate they were maybe 20, maybe even 18, 19, 20, I don't know. And what I loved about it was just like they were clearly two young women who absolutely loved Paramore and were obsessed with them. And I remember having that passion when I was a kid. I remember at Soundwave 2013, Derek Whibley from Sum 41 was like, who wants to come up on stage? And I was like, please. Now I wouldn't want to go up on stage, really. But these two girls clearly loved it. They came on. Their excitement was just so what's the word I'm looking for? I want to say toxic, but I know that's the wrong word. But I think their excitement was so like it was spreading. Like their excitement spread, I feel, to everyone else. Like viral. I think that's why I thought toxic, because my brain was thinking viral. Their excitement was really viral in the room. And you were just like, oh, this is awesome. And then they started singing it and they were just so into it. And I was like, this is such a happy, joyous, positive moment on stage right now that I am absolutely loving. And I thought it was amazing. And it was just such a great night. Another interesting thing that happened at the Paramore concert though was, and I actually didn't even pick up on this. I must have zoned out for a bit because producer Pat sent it to me. Catch him on the Pat and Mike show, patreon.com/Radio Mike, by the way. I think during the song Hard Times, I think there was an issue with the pyrotechnics. So when Paramore was singing Hard Times on Monday in Melbourne, there was an issue with the pyrotechnics, and Hayley Williams then sang about someone is going to get fired. They've done this to us every night. But she was just sing-songing it to the tune of the song, so it just sounded normal. So you can hear the pyro going off. Somebody is getting fired. So she sings, and it's for some reason it's to the tune of I think like I can't remember the name of that song. I can't remember the name of the song, but she sings, "Somebody is gonna get fired. They've done that shit to us 3 times now." And I'm actually not sure if she's joking or not, because obviously like pyrotechnics can be really dangerous if not done right. And they are going off at the wrong cues. And I think but then I'm not sure if the pyrotechnic operator is Paramore's staff or Rod Laver Arena, the venue staff. And I don't know if I genuinely can't tell if she is joking here or not, because I do feel like if you're actually angry and someone is going to get fired, it would be really cruel to do that. That's why I'm leaning towards she's just joking around and like making fun of a mistake. But it does sound like she's pretty it does feel like she's passively aggressively getting angry at someone operating the pyro. But I don't know. I don't know enough about live shows to know how this could possibly go wrong or happen. But yeah, I do find it interesting, like that she did that. I definitely think it must be a bit of a tongue-in-cheek joke for the crowd, because I don't think if someone was, you wouldn't then go backstage and be like, "You're fired, didn't you hear in the song?" I don't think she would do that. But it is a very interesting thing that happened in the concert, and the way she just improvised it, Very, very, very sharp and very clever. I've also been watching the Squid Game, The Challenge reality TV series. Netflix has basically commissioned a Squid Game reality show, which is essentially just a real life version of Squid Game, except obviously people don't actually get killed when they lose. And there's a bunch of stuff I want to talk about in here because it's a really good watch. It's really fun, as was the original Squid Game, but I think there's so many issues with it that I just kept laughing at while I was watching it. Some big, some not so big. So let's get the big stuff out of the way. The first thing that I find really funny is that the actual Squid Game series is about anti-capitalism and how capitalism just fucks everyone up, right? That like all of the whole premise of the show is that, because if you don't know, they're playing these games that are funded by billionaires who want to watch people die and fight for their lives. And basically they're games, but if you lose, you die. They kill you on the spot, right? There's one victor, they take home $4.63 million or something like that. And the whole thing in Squid Game is that these people would rather compete in the Squid Games where they could die if they lose than be in real life society. So they willingly choose to be at the in the Squid Game because real life, they have no hope. They all are in debt. They all, have no prospects of getting out of debt, gambling issues, criminal issues, or just generally don't have enough money to live and survive. So they're like, all right, I'll take my chances in Squid Game, right? It's very anti-capitalist. And then spinning it off to turn it into a reality show where the people in the reality show are actually saying in their pieces to camera, oh, I really need this money. Cost of living is so high and I can't support my family or my kids. It's like, oh, okay, so Netflix made this show, but they don't get the show because it's clear that these people genuinely need this money, which is why, I don't know, there's just something ethically that feels really wrong about Netflix doing this that I just couldn't stop laughing at because the whole point of the show is, oh, this is bad, but then they're literally doing it in real life, except without killing the people. That's the big stuff out of the way. Like the philosophical stuff is the show makes no sense if you understand the source material, I guess, for lack of a better term. The first episode, and it just echoes, it's basically just Squid Game PG version. Like no murder, no death, no horror kind of aspects. Like there's no real stakes. Like the original Squid Game is really scary and intense to watch because you know what's at stake. The funniest part about the Squid Game reality TV series is the producers have clearly told them, so when they do go out, instead of them being shot, there's just like a fake kind of like, they've clearly got like some pack on their chest that explodes and shoots out like this red ink that makes it look like they've been shot, which is a creative way to like keep the show alive, to keep the original like concept alive without actually killing people, right? That's all well and good. The funniest part is that obviously the producers have told them, okay, if you get eliminated and your thing bursts, you have to pretend like you're falling over dead. So half of them do it and they're like really badly acting like, ugh, and they pretend that they're dead. But then some of them, like particularly I noticed some of the older people, they just like their thing explodes, they're standing up and they're like, ah, no. And then they just sit down. It's really funny. And then some of them, the thing explodes and they're literally like, you can just see them laughing at how stupid it is that they have to pretend to die. And they're like looking at the other people and they're like, ugh, and then they're just cracking up laughing and the camera quickly cuts. I found that really, really funny. And it's like just it works really well conceptually as a reality show. Like it has like, I guess, Survivor vibes where there's like alliances and villains and betrayals and all that stuff. And great, it's a good show. Don't get me wrong. There's been a lot of controversy around the new Squid Game TV show because people are saying that particularly in the first challenge, it was like freezing temperatures and they had to be outside for like 6 hours and everyone had hypothermia. And, you know, now they're taking legal action against Netflix or the company because they shouldn't have been treated in such inhumane ways and et cetera, et cetera. I have a lot of thoughts on this. And I'm like, as I get older, I'm becoming more and more cynical and bitter towards this stuff. And maybe people hate that. I don't know. But I genuinely believe what I'm saying, so I'm just going to say it. You know who isn't going to take legal action and who isn't going to complain to the producers? The person who wins the 4.63 million. Okay? Who was in the exact same set of circumstances as everyone else. And my point is, all of these people that did the first game got eliminated within the first few minutes, right? They're all annoyed because they had to sign up for this game. They had to go through probably heaps of auditions. They probably got paid like a nominal fee for their time on the day. They get out there, it's shit conditions, it's not organized that well, which admittedly is the production company's fault, right? Who are trying to navigate organizing 460 people, right? And then they start the game, they're like, yeah, I'm going to get through, I'm going to win, I'm going to do really well. Within the first 5 minutes, 200 people are eliminated. They've gone through all of this, probably months and months of prep. They show up on the day, within 5 minutes they're eliminated. They're like, this sucks, this is annoying. And then they're angry and they're like, you know what? This was bullshit. We all had to stand in the cold and what? Just to get eliminated within a few minutes? That's stupid. We got to take legal action against them. I guarantee you no one who got to the last couple rounds is doing that. It's only these people who showed up, it wasn't what they thought, and they didn't get to go through to the next round because like on their own error, they made a mistake and now they're upset and they want something out of the show because they spent a lot of time auditioning. They spent a lot of time, you know, doing it and they didn't get like the reward they wanted. I think that. And you can see, funnily enough, you can see one of the things I noticed when I was watching the first one is they all have their hands in their pockets, which someone online has said that's because one of the contestants like, that's because it was freezing cold. Everyone's running with their hands in their pockets, like, because it was freezing. And I get that. And it definitely is on the production company to provide like, I don't know, some kind of heating or some kind of making sure people aren't getting freezing. But I also think like you signed up for it. Like, you can leave. You can say, hey, I can't do it. I'm going to leave. I seriously doubt anyone's going to be like, no, you have to stay. Could be wrong. But my general theory on this, and I hate how bitter and old man-y it sounds, is that no one in the last few rounds is going to sue Netflix. It's only people from that first round who are upset that they didn't get through. Yes, things were probably bad. They were probably really cold. They didn't feel like they don't feel like it was fair on them. And now they're like, I want to get something out of this because I wasted so much of my time on it and it was all a waste of time because I got out straight away. So they're upset. That's what I think. I don't think the winner is going to sue for any damages or anyone who got to the top. I am going to keep watching it though. I find it really interesting. But yeah, it definitely is completely antithetical to the anti-capitalist messaging of the source. And that's the funniest part about our society, isn't it? That like we make a show about how capitalism is really bad for our society and how it makes people suffer, right? And if we reward capital in our society, then of course, we are going to be in situations where some people have enormous amounts of power over other people and how, you know, very wealthy people keep their wealth in their family and just, you know, history repeats itself. Generations inherit everything or nothing and the world lives on that and that's not going to change, right? We make those points. It touches the world. The whole world sees it and goes, yes, this is so accurate. And then then Netflix goes, all right, so how can we monetize this concept further and makes the fucking reality show? Really stupid. Okay, that's more or less everything for this week. So we will do a cheeky little wrap up with one of these bad boys. Whoops, where's the button? Here it is. That's the wrong one. That's the right one. Sorry, everyone, that was my mistake. I accidentally pressed 2 buttons at the same time, so they just both played. So I'll play it again.
The plug.
Hey, it's Australia's most unprofessional podcast. No, it's not. It's actually, I think this podcast is quite professional. Anyway, hey, the main thing I want to plug is my live show, Harry Potter and the Boys Live, December 15th. I obviously just plugged it at the top, but I'm plugging it again. RadioMike.com.au/tickets. It's going to be an awesome night. Great way to end the year before Christmas, so would love to see you there. It's a Friday night, 7 p.m. Cooper's Inn. Would love to see you. All those podcasts I mentioned, and of course, just the general Harry Potter and the Boys pod, but also the Patreon, patreon.com/RadioMike. The Pat and Mike show is there. That's going so well. We have so much fun. We are having discussions about making the Pat and Mike show just a Friday episode of 20th Century Boy. So every Friday, everyone will just get the Pat and Mike show. And we'll have 2 pods basically on the feed. I think that'd be really cool. Not confirmed yet, but please join the Patreon anyway. That's pretty much it, guys. Thanks so much for listening. I can't wait to catch you next week. My name's Radio Mike. This has been The Inside of My Mind. See you later.